Over the past few days, there's been some arising rumors that Microsoft might be working on a fourth model Xbox One to come out sometime next year, something that would be kind of a super slim model where it's cheaper and smaller than currently available Xbox Ones. And the way that Microsoft would achieve this is with a very interesting and very important single decision: dropping the disk drive.
The ultimate in radical technology, TurboGrafx CD. It uses the immense memory of CD software to bring you super intense gameplay.
Now, there are a lot of reasons why they might want to drop a disk drive, and honestly, I think they're good ones. We'll get into that a little bit. But first, let's just talk about the immediate impact of doing something like that. By removing the disk drive from the Xbox, you end up making a lot of free space inside of the system, and thus you can make it a lot more cheap because you're able to use larger parts for other things, you can rearrange it a little bit on the inside, and overall make a much more affordable system. And if these rumors are true, the idea is to make a system that is on par with the Xbox One S in terms of power, but at a price point below $200. As for what something like this would look like, I think Microsoft is currently on the trend of really wanting to focus on making all their systems very aesthetically similar. You can already see that with the One S and One X, where yes, there are some differences where they place vents and some very specific shapes, but the general design idea where you have this main rectangular block piece with the stand, I think they're going to keep that. Now, by removing the disk drive, and depending on what they do with other parts, they could heavily change the shape of the system. It could just be something that's thinner, or it could potentially even move to being closer like a square shape as opposed to the rectangle we're currently seeing. Like I said earlier, this is an interesting and I think good idea for a few different reasons. And keep in mind, this is coming from someone who traditionally loves physical media. I have held on as long as I can to still buy physical copies of my games because, yeah, I'm a little vain. I like having a collection that I can look at. But at the same time, there's getting to be fewer and fewer good reasons to really justify them still being a thing. Aside from common arguments like, oh, digital is just so much more convenient, and then obviously the fact that we talked about earlier where it saves room in the system, there's just a lot of reasons why discs don't make a ton of sense anymore to use on a major console. First off, it's just outdated technology.
First, remove the disc from the case. Push open on your CDI player, or you may use the controller to open the disc drawer.
Most games now, when you buy them, even physically, you're installing most of the game on your hard drive because the time it takes to read a disc is just too slow to be functional. And we're even getting to the point where games are getting so large, some games still need 2 discs even though we have such larger capacities now. For instance, Red Dead Redemption 2 just launched with an install disc and a play disc. That's crazy. Not to mention the fact that producing something like this in large quantities creates a lot of waste versus compared to just buying something digitally where you just download to your system and you're done. That's really simple. Now, there are some counter arguments to why you might not want this, but honestly, a lot of them aren't really as true as they used to be. For instance, yes, going all digital does mean you're going to use up more hard drive space going physical, but that doesn't mean much anymore because, like I said, most games have you install the vast majority of their data now. Some don't. Some games don't rely on as much, like, say, fighting games, but anything that's open world, you basically install the whole thing and you're going to use that space either way. Now, there's also the fear that, well, if you go all digital, some games might at one point just cease to exist and there's no way to get them, which is a rightful fear. I mean, we're already seeing that happen with some games like the PT demo that you can't download anymore even if you got it once before. But the issue there is that games are now relying so much on day one patches or DLC or balance fixes that even if you still owned a physical copy of a game, it might not really be usable in the far future if you can't download all those fixes and such. It's not going to run the way that it's really meant to. There's always going to be that part of me that wants the nostalgia and loves the idea of owning physical games and all the old cartridges and stuff I have, and I'm still going to get some of those, but it just doesn't really make sense anymore. And I think it's kind of going the same way that a lot of other digital media is where, you can still have those limited physical releases. There can be those physical options for people that really want to collect that, but it can't be the default option for everyone anymore. As of right now, Microsoft has not commented at all on these rumors, so we have no indication of whether or not this is at all real. And usually, I'm very, very skeptical of rumors, but I kind of lean towards this one being real, and if it's not, it's something that I could very easily see Microsoft really doing. And this all plays into something that I think has really been Microsoft's kind of hidden strategy over the last couple years, which is to try out a couple of different, slightly crazy ideas and seeing how the market reacts to it and whether or not it would work for a potential new system, whatever you want to call it, the Xbox 2. But the point is, you're seeing all these different ideas like Xbox Game Pass, where you're not only being able to play all these games for monthly fee, but you're getting access to brand new games right away on launch day, like Forza Horizon 4. You're seeing again with the idea where they tested the market for people buying Xboxes and paying for it monthly versus having actually just buy a system straight up at the full price. And if this rumor is true, we're seeing another test with the idea of a system that doesn't have a disk drive. It all plays into this concept of a new Xbox that focuses more on digital and streamable games instead of the traditional way consoles are perceived.